General Hospital will reveal exciting details on Friday, February 14, 2025. First, Christina was leveraging her position to impose a series of agreements regarding Avery's custody, leaving Ava seething with anger. The terms Christina laid out were not only unexpected but also entirely unfavorable for Ava, who found herself forced to listen to someone who was now speaking on Sunny's behalf. It was clear that Christina had assumed a new level of authority, one that Ava had not anticipated, and with it came the power to dictate decisions that directly impacted her relationship with Avery. Ava knew that arguing against these demands would likely be futile, but the sheer audacity of Christina's approach made it impossible for her to accept without resistance. The terms were restrictive, designed to limit Ava's influence and presence in her own daughter's life, and the fact that Christina delivered them with an air of confidence only deepened Ava's frustration. Despite her anger, Ava understood that she was in a precarious situation with little room to negotiate. Christina had the full support of her family, which meant that any attempt to push back would only lead to further complications. Ava had always been adept at maneuvering difficult situations, but this time, she found herself with limited leverage. The weight of Sunny's absence had shifted the balance of power, and Christina was taking full advantage of it. Each clause of the agreement chipped away at Ava's autonomy, binding her to conditions that she found nearly unbearable. She considered the possibility of refusing outright, of fighting against the injustice of it all, but the risk of losing even more time with Avery loomed over her like a shadow. She had no choice but to tread carefully. As Christina stood firm, unwavering in her stance, Ava's resentment simmered beneath the surface. She had never imagined that Christina, of all people, would be the one dictating her future with her daughter. It wasn't just about Avery anymore, it was about control, about power, and about Ava's unwillingness to be manipulated. Christina wasn't just enforcing Sunny's will, she was making her own mark, asserting her influence in a way that made it clear she intended to be a force to be reckoned with. The realization sent a wave of bitterness through Ava, who had always prided herself on being the one who dictated the terms of her own life. Now, she was being forced into compliance by someone she had once dismissed as an inconsequential player in the game. Though she ultimately conceded to the unfavorable terms, Ava did so with the silent promise that this would not be the end of the battle. She may have lost this round, but she would not remain powerless forever. If Christina thought she could keep Ava in check indefinitely, she was sorely mistaken. Ava would find a way to regain her standing, to reclaim her influence, and to ensure that no one, not Christina, not Sunny's family, not anyone, could keep her from having a say in her daughter's life. For now, she would bide her time, but when the moment was right, she would strike back. Second, Molly had finally revealed her upcoming plan to investigate Sam's death, a decision that sent Christina into a fit of rage. The revelation was met with immediate resistance, as Christina could hardly believe that Molly was willing to dig into a past that had already caused so much pain. The very idea of reopening old wounds, of chasing after the truth in a way that could stir up more trouble, was something Christina refused to support. She saw it as reckless, unnecessary, and a path that would only lead to more suffering. But Molly was steadfast in her conviction, believing that justice had yet to be served and that she had no choice but to uncover the real story behind Sam's tragic fate. Their opposing perspectives clashed violently, igniting a heated argument that neither sister was willing to back down from. Christina's frustration grew with every word Molly said, her voice rising in anger as she tried to reason with her sister. She didn't understand why Molly couldn't let go, why she felt the need to pursue answers that might only bring more danger. To Christina, vengeance had never been the solution, and she was certain that digging into the past would only create new enemies. But Molly had already made up her mind, dismissing Christina's warnings with unwavering determination. She refused to accept that they should simply move on and let time erase what had happened. For her, uncovering the truth was not about vengeance, it was about making things right. She couldn't bear the thought of Sam's death being left unanswered, of the possibility that someone was walking free while her sister was gone. The tension between them escalated, widening the rift that had already begun to form. Christina, driven by her fear of losing yet another family member to a dangerous pursuit, accused Molly of being blinded by her emotions. She warned her that obsession with the past would only consume her, leaving her with nothing but regret. But Molly saw things differently. In her eyes, Christina's refusal to act was nothing more than cowardice, a way to avoid confronting painful truths. She resented the implication that she was being reckless when, in reality, she was doing what no one else seemed willing to do. Their argument turned into a battle of principles, each sister convinced that she was in the right, neither willing to yield to the other's perspective. Though the fight ended without resolution, the damage had already been done. The bond between them, once unshakable, had begun to crack under the weight of their differences. Christina walked away, her heart heavy with anger and worry, while Molly remained resolute, refusing to let her sister's disapproval deter her from her mission. The divide between them had never felt so deep, and as Molly prepared to move forward with her investigation, she knew that Christina might never stand by her side. But despite the conflict, she could not ignore the pull of justice. No matter what it cost her, she was determined to find the truth, whether Christina liked it or not. Third, Alexis arrived to meet Jason with a mixture of determination and desperation, hoping that he would listen to her plea. She had spent sleepless nights unraveling the truth behind Sam's death, and now, she finally had the answer she had been searching for. The name that had haunted her thoughts, the one responsible for taking her daughter's life, was none other than Cyrus. The revelation filled her with both rage and fear, knowing that the man who had orchestrated Sam's murder was still out there, free to continue his reign of terror. But Alexis also knew there was only one person she could turn to, someone who could do what the justice system could not, Jason. As she laid everything out before him, her voice steady but laced with emotion, she made her case not just as a grieving mother but as someone who understood the weight of the world Jason lived in. She wasn't asking for an investigation or a legal battle, she was asking for retribution. She wanted Cyrus to pay for what he had done, and more than that, she needed to ensure that Danny would never have to suffer the same fate as his mother. Jason remained silent, his expression unreadable, but Alexis could sense the intensity in his gaze. He had lost Sam too, and she knew that the wound was still raw. This wasn't just about vengeance, it was about protecting what little remained of the family Sam had left behind. For a brief moment, Alexis wondered if she had set her expectations too high. Jason had walked away from the life of violence before, trying to carve out a different path, and asking him to take this step again was asking him to embrace the darkness he had long tried to escape. But when he finally spoke, his answer was absolute. Without hesitation, he agreed to her request, his voice firm with conviction. There was no doubt, no reluctance, only the quiet promise that he would handle it. Cyrus had made a fatal mistake in taking Sam's life, and now, he would have to answer for it. A wave of relief washed over Alexis, but it was not without the weight of knowing what would come next. Jason's acceptance of this mission meant there was no turning back. She had set something in motion, something that would only end when justice, or vengeance, was delivered. As she walked away, she couldn't help but wonder if she had just condemned Cyrus or if she had dragged Jason even deeper into a life he could never truly escape. Either way, the decision had been made, and now, it was only a matter of time before Jason carried it out. Finally, Rick couldn't shake the doubts gnawing at him as he contemplated the path ahead. Every decision, every move forward, felt like stepping into a minefield, and he wasn't sure if he was prepared for what lay ahead. His instincts told him that hesitation was dangerous, yet his legal mind warned him that blind action could be even worse. He had spent years navigating high-stakes battles in court, but this situation was far more complex than any case he had ever argued. The custody war between Ava and Sonny was reaching a boiling point, and while Rick had no personal stake in their battle, he couldn't ignore the ramifications it might have on everything else happening in Port Charles. Ava was cunning, and if anyone underestimated her, they would regret it. She had an uncanny ability to turn weaknesses into advantages, and Sonny's empire was already vulnerable. If she played her cards right, she could walk away with more than just custody, she could strike where it hurt the most. Rick knew that, and he suspected Sunny did too. But what neither of them seemed to fully grasp was how unpredictable Ava could be when cornered. At the same time, another storm was brewing, one that made Rick just as uneasy. Liz was digging deeper into Cyrus's activities at the hospital, and that investigation was becoming more dangerous by the day. Cyrus wasn't just a ruthless criminal, he was a man who thrived in deception, whose power didn't rely on brute force alone but on the intricate web of control he wove around his enemies. Liz was determined to uncover the truth, to expose the motive behind his latest act of violence, but Rick wasn't convinced she understood just how much danger she was inviting into her life. He had seen what happened to people who got too close to Cyrus, and the consequences were never mild. If Liz continued down this path, she wouldn't just find the truth, she might find herself in a situation she couldn't escape. The more Rick thought about it, the more he realized that his doubts weren't just paranoia, they were well-founded. The battle for Avery's custody, the unraveling mystery of Cyrus's crimes, and the people determined to take justice into their own hands were all pieces of a much larger puzzle. He couldn't shake the feeling that all of these conflicts were about to collide in ways no one had anticipated. It was only a matter of time before lines were crossed and irreversible decisions were made. Rick had seen enough to know that when emotions ran high, logic often took a back seat. And right now, too many people were making decisions based on emotion rather than strategy. Despite his reservations, Rick knew that hesitation would accomplish nothing. He had to be ready for whatever came next, whether that meant watching Ava pull Sunny into a legal nightmare or preparing for the fallout of Liz's relentless pursuit of justice. The pieces were already in motion, and soon, someone would make the wrong move. When that happened, Rick had a feeling that Port Charles would never be the same.